Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. For my future career, I dream of reporting on the news on many platforms. Whether this is on the radio, TV, or online, I would love to have my own studio someday conduct fair and honest reporting. However, in recent years, I've come to the realization that this is becoming more and more difficult. And this is because of two main problems that the industry faces. The first is because of the issue of bad news bias. Essentially, this is the disproportionate amount of time the media spends on negative news to maximize viewership. And the second is due to censorship and suppression of free speech on domestic and global scale. When it comes to bad news bias, the first thing you must understand is that journalism is a business. The way mass media outlets like CNN or Fox make their money is through ad revenue. And companies give them an ad to run and they pay them based on how many people view the ad. Investopedia.com, last accessed on April 7th, 2021, describes it this way. It's about getting as many eyeballs on the ad as possible each time it airs. Essentially, they're saying that the more people that watch, the more money they make. But how do they draw people in? They actively try to keep the news as interesting and exciting as they can. The evidence for this can be seen in the massive amount of negative news surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. The New York Times, last accessed on April 7th, 2021, reports that when COVID cases were rising in the US, the news coverage emphasized the increase. And when cases were falling, the coverage instead focused on the places where the cases were rising. And this should be alarming. This means that the mass media knowingly and deliberately framed a global pandemic in a negative light to increase viewership for their own profits. There's a huge problem to overcome in the industry for sure. But even larger than that, and on a global scale, is government censorship. And this can be an attempt to discredit the mass media by a politician or attempts through legal action. Take what former President Donald Trump had to say about fake news. Politico, last accessed on April 7, 2021, reports that the New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger said that in his meeting with the now ex-president, he had spent much time talking about the vast amounts of fake news put out by the media and how fake news has morphed into the phrase, the enemy of the people. And this rhetoric is damaging to the industry as it muddles the waters of what is true and what is fake. Beyond this issue of rhetoric is the federal government keeping too close of an eye on the media. The Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index, last accessed on April 7th, 2021, places the United States as the 45th most free press. And largely this is because the US government was, quote, using a secret database tracking journalists, activists, and others at the border who authorities believed should be stopped for questioning. But what about the freedom of the press? Apparently, the federal government doesn't care anymore. And this is even evident on a global scale. Take, for instance, the treatment of WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange. Britannica, last accessed on April 7, 2021, explains that this man posted almost 500,000 documents obtained from U.S. Army intelligence analyst Bradley Manning, later called Chelsea Manning, mainly relating to U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And following this, he was placed under house arrest in England, faced persecution in Sweden, and in Ecuador he sought asylum, but it was revoked. It seems as though the whole world was against Julian. And if he's convicted of a crime, it will set a dangerous precedent for the industry of journalism as a whole. But what can we do to combat these problems? Well, first, I would say that it's important to look at the larger context. There's always a positive and negative side of the story, and it is also important to take a step back. Now, ask yourself if the information that you have been presented with has been mostly negative, and how that could influence public perception or even your own perception of the issue. And this will help to make a better journalistic world. To help to solve the issue of suppression of the press, there are also a few things that you can do. The first is you can support groups like Reporters Without Borders, who are actively trying to combat suppression of the press and actively trying to combat free press suppression. But the other thing that you can do is to spread the word when you notice damaging anti-press rhetoric, and to call out political leaders, governmental officials, whoever it is that is spreading this rhetoric. Because at the end of the day, the people are what give power to these huge, powerful entities. And we also have the power to keep them in check. If we can come together and collectively say, "You're wrong," we can create a much better journalistic world. Thank you.